Hey, what's up, guys? Coach Mac, Play Fast Football. In the description box below, I am going to leave a link to GameStrat Football, which is the sideline company that, the sideline replay system that we use currently right now. So I'm going to leave a link for GameStrat, and I'm going to leave a link for Just Play Sports Solution, which is a company that I use to do some of my playbook stuff, and they've been very good to me, and both companies have been very good to me. So I'm going to leave descriptions and links in the description box below if any of you are interested in checking out any of those companies. I had a chance today. I was reading through some stuff on social media, and I was looking at some stuff, and a lot of talk about RPOs nowadays, and a lot of talk about where football is kind of, or offense, where it's going, where it's been, and so I figured I'd give everybody just kind of a little bit of a history lesson on where things were and where they are now, and how it's actually very similar, within the exception of how we're using the rules now with RPOs, but how some of that stuff is actually very similar as far as how offense is used to attack or try to attack, or how offense is used to hold or handle extra defenders, all right, and kind of progress from where it was to where it is now. So most of you, if you're my age, if you're 46 years or older, or in that ballpark, you're familiar with 21 personnel under center offensive sets, and then I've got an under front, reduction front, quarter. Usually back in the day we used to see a lot of quarter half stuff, so it'd be a lot of, depending on where the ball was in the middle of the field or into the boundary, you'd see a lot of quarter half stuff. And one of the first lessons I learned when I started coaching football in college was, if you're running inside zone type of stuff, how do you handle the defensive end on the backside? And back in the day, you had three standard ways that teams would always go to. If you were running any type of zone stuff to the front side, all right, if you were running any type of zone stuff to the front side, you had kind of three ways that you would handle that backside five technique. All right, the first, all right, with the, with split zone stuff, we used to call it zipping the backside. All right, so we used to have a fullback that would kick, all right, or zip, or whatever terminology you use. There's so many different terminologies out there, but in college we used to call it zipping the backside with the fullback, and we would run inside zone to the front side. Okay, we would then also have motion where we would come with some type of orbit motion from the Z, and we would fake some type of reverse, all right, on the backside, so that we could handle what we thought was going to be that CBR counter boot reverse player. We would have some type of reverse to handle him on the backside, especially if there were any, if you were getting any type of rotation to where it was possible, 8-man front stuff, and you had to boss any of these plays and put the fullback out there on that strong safety, free safety, rotated guy down, and you didn't have anything on the backside, you would take that Z and kind of use them in reverse action. And then the last way was always to boot the quarterback. And then as a young GA in college, that was one of my jobs, is I always had to tell the offensive coordinator, how were they handling the backside? Was anybody taking care of the quarterback on any of these front side runs? Was anybody taking the quarterback on the backside? And I would be the guy that would be responsible for, yeah, coach, that end is doing a good job. He's playing the quarterback. Bootlegs aren't there. It was one of those three ways generally to basically say, how are we going to handle, all right, that extra player when we run inside zone? We can zip them with the fullback, we can fake the reverse with the Z, or we can boot the quarterback. And that was basically off of the inside zone. If we're not going to block this in, we had to figure out a way to handle him so that he couldn't chase that play down all the time, right? Well, obviously as the game started to progress and all of a sudden teams started getting into the shotgun, well, zone read became one of the ways that you started handling that backside guy, because you were in the shotgun. Now all of a sudden you were going inside run, and your QB was handling that guy by reading him. And the zone read play became so prevalent, all right, with slowing down how teams play that five technique on the backside, and then you would force those teams to have some type of other answer, whether it be dropping something down weak. If the ball, if the ball was into the boundary, it might have been that corner. If the ball was in the middle, all right, it might have been that extra safety, which now gets you into some type of 8-man front, and now you have the matchups that you're looking for to the X receiver. So, even 20, 25 years ago when I was in college and we were a two-back team and I played X receiver, we were looking for all the same matchups. How many do you have in the box? Do we get one-on-one on the outside? And the way we used to play the game back in the old days is we would have two plays called in huddle. Before there was a lot of no huddle and a lot of tempo and a lot of RPOs, we would have two plays called in huddle, and the quarterback would have, like an isolation play or a quick series play. So the quarterback would have ice or 20s on the ball, would be one of our calls coming out of the huddle, and I played X receiver. And my best friend in college was my tailback, Anthony Russo, who was the all-time, when he graduated in '95, he was the all-time leading rusher in Division III, and I played X receiver. And thanks to my friend Anthony Russo, I was one of the all-time leading touchdown receptions in Division III / 1AA non-scholarship. I ended up with 40 touchdown catches, 30 my freshman, sophomore, junior year while he was playing tailback, because all we did was we saw how you handle the box. We have the all-time Division III leading rusher. You put 8 guys in a box, we get one-on-one outside. That's where we lived all the time. So it was a real easy game for our quarterback. Our quarterback would come up and we would have the isolation play. All right, so we would have ice or 20s called in huddle. So we would be running isolation weak side. All right, and our quarterback would just check and see where that 8th defender in the box or how they were playing the backside. If they gave us the isolation play, we ran isolation. If they gave us anything where they dropped a safety down and brought a corner off, we would just throw a quick game outside. So we were doing it from the huddle. We were doing it as a check with me team. We were doing it as a 2-play call in the huddle, and the quarterback comes up and we had live and dead colors. All those things were being done 25 years ago. All right, and you were always trying to find ways to block extra players, right? So we were always trying to find ways. If you were running weak side isolation, you always had to figure out how you could block that extra defender. And if you were an under center team, and before there were RPOs, all right, you had to figure out a way to block that extra defender, right? So where the game has kind of gone full circle now is now we figured out a way within the rules to block extra players, all right, by using guys that are in the shotgun. Now that the quarterback is in the shotgun and he can handle all the reads at 5 yards, the game hasn't really changed that much. To be honest with you, one of the main runs you're still going to see. Now, it may be, the only difference is now maybe it's off a zone action, whereas 25, 30 years ago, isolation was taught as a straight play, all right, to where if there was going to be an isolation play, it was taught to the lineman as a hard ball run play with base blocks and double teams and hard movement and an isolation block. ISO was always a play, 34 ISO or however you called it or whatever terminology you used. Isolation was always a play that was taught 20, 25 years ago, especially when I was growing up. You always had an isolation play in. Okay, well, now there's a couple different ways that teams are using isolation. Doesn't matter. All right, now that everybody has primarily gone to zone blocking schemes, you can turn on any college football game that you want to, and you're still getting isolation plays. Now all they're doing is they're blocking front side zone, and they're just locking the backside. All right, and now they're running zone, and they're still isoing a linebacker. All right, and they're blocking 6-on-6 in the box. So isolation is still, all right, a big play in football. It's just called zone insert now, or it's called zone lead, or it's, whatever all the fancy terms are for how teams get their fullback to insert zone boss and whatever way you want to get where you want your fullback to insert to. Okay, so isolation is the same play it was 30 years ago. The difference is now we figured out how to block extra players by using the rules. So now when we run the isolation play, the way we're going to block extra defenders is now post-snap. See, we used to, 25 years ago, your quarterback would have to pre-snap make a decision and have 2 plays at the line. He'd have isolation, all right, when you were an under center team, he had isolation called, or he had a quick game or some type of pass called, and he had to read pre-snap where everybody was, and he would make up his mind pre-snap. Well, now, in today's game with the shotgun, what you're seeing is all these reads are now starting to happen post-snap because the quarterback has a chance to mesh and ride and decide. So now you're getting the same type of isolation plays, okay? And your quarterback is now getting a chance to take care of extra guys by running routes with your X-receiver. So now all we're doing is we're doing the same thing that we were doing 20 years ago. We're running the same versions of plays. We're running zone insert, all right, which is the old-fashioned isolation play that almost every offense started with, and it was hang your hat, and your O-linemen were going to be physical with their drive blocks, and there was going to be a double team, and you were going to work that double team and put a guy in a linebacker's lap, and your fullback was a lunch pail guy that was banging heads all the time with the will linebacker. And that drill, they would do that drill with the fullback and the Willie and the Mike isolation blocks all day. Dig your heels in. And those guys were the old-fashioned, badass, hard-nosed guys. The Mike and the Will and the fullback were just constantly train wreck. Okay? Well, the game hasn't changed that much. We're still running isolation plays. All we're doing now is off of zone theory is we're inserting a fullback, and maybe the terminology is a little bit different, but now we're going zone theories with an insert. But now what we're doing is we're blocking the extra players post-snap by running routes with receivers to take care of those extra defenders. So really, in essence, what it's come down to is we're playing post-snap option football in the passing game. All right, that's really all that it's come down to. But at the end of the day, we're still trying to find ways to block extra players the same way you had to find ways 30 years ago. All right, when I talked about the inside zone play, whether you were going to zip, reverse, or boot the backside 5 technique, it was still the same thing you had to do 30 years ago. You had to find a way to block extra defenders, right? So now in today's game, we found a way to block those extra defenders, and within the rules, whether people like it, don't like it, all right, kind of like Ric Flair said, whether you like it or you hate it, you better learn to love it because it's not going anywhere. Right? It's the best thing out there, all right? So whether you like it or not, or whether coaches like it or not, all the college coaches that hate RPOs, most of them run them on offense because if it's within the rules and they're going to give it to you, you have to be able to use what you need to use. So now you got the best of both worlds. You're playing option football, post-snap, running hardball. These are hardball runs. You're teaching your kids to be physical. 6-on-6 in the box. We got to win. Let's be physical. The only thing we're doing is we're finding out ways to block extra defenders the same way we used to. Whether it would be quarterback boots, zip reverses, fullback zip in the backside. You always had to account for those guys in those defenses. Now we're finding ways to do it by accounting for it post-snap in the RPO game. Okay, so, the game hasn't really changed all that much. Within the rules, guys are now learning how to use the rules to their advantage, but the game hasn't changed from the standpoint of the types of plays that you're trying to run, all right, or the types of plays that teams are trying to run. That hasn't changed all that much. All right, for argument's sake, you see a lot of teams now running tackle wrap stuff, right? Well, really in essence, the tackle wrap play or the dart play, all right, all that is old school isolation. That's all that play is. It's an ISO play. All right, you're isolating a linebacker. You're just doing it with a tackle. All right, so the scheme really doesn't change. If you were going to double team here and work back to a backer, and you were going to base drive, pull the tackle, and lead him up on the mic, that right there is an isolation play. It's the same thing your fullback would have done 20 years ago, or the same thing he does now. That is an isolation blocking scheme. There's a double on a 1, back to a backer. There's a base, and there's a tackle pull, right? So now you're getting all these isolation schemes. From the shotgun, this isolation play with the tackle was allowed to occur because now you had somebody that could read, all right? You had somebody that could read the 5 technique on the backside. So you got yourself into a one-back ISO world, all right, which 20, 30 years ago, teams would have thought you were crazy. When you were one back 25 years ago, you were inside zone, outside zone, maybe some trap, all right? Maybe toss, maybe belly, whatever, but bottom line is if you were a one-back team, there really were no two-back run looks. There were no isolation plays. There were no read power plays. If you were one-back, with the exception of maybe some 11 personnel or one-back power to trips when I guess Joe Gibbs and maybe Dennis Erickson and some of those guys back in the day got into one-back and 12 personnel and other stuff and running GT counter and stuff like that. But really, you used to be able to tell when a team was one-back, they were inside zone, outside zone. They really had no isolation type plays. Well, the shotgun and the dart play gave us a way to run isolation theories. All right, this is the same way if you had the same way I just had a fullback in the game and a six-man box. The same isolation play with the fullback is now being done by reading the 5 technique and using the tackle as the isolation block on the Mike linebacker. Okay, and then you take it a step further. All right, and guys are just adding to it in the RPO world. Take it a step further to kind of handle that will or that extra guy that's hanging out around there. Now you run the same scheme, all right, and you ISO the Mike, but now you actually go back on the 5, and when you ISO the Mike, now you got guys running routes behind the Willie, and now you got ISO on the Mike with the tackle wrap play, and you're accounting for the will because you blocked the 5. You're accounting for the will. Since you're a one-back isolation team, you're now accounting for the will by throwing a route off of him in the dart isolation scheme. Okay, so even in today's, all right, even in today's, you know, fancy way of doing all the different things that people are doing, it's still old school football in a sense that you are just trying to use old school isolation theories to block extra defenders. All right, so you see a lot of teams now running even like, you know, isolation theories and just window dressing it with other things. All right, to where like you might get push, maybe you get push motion here. All right, and now maybe depending on where the weak safety is, you get up to the alley, sniffer out, and now you come back and you run tackle wrap isolation. Your quarterback reads the 5 technique. If the 5 technique doesn't squeeze, or your quarterback, you can read the 5, you can read the Mike, however you want to handle it. If the Mike is out on the tailback flare, you're going to run the quarterback wrap. Okay? If the Mike is in and you get leverage out here, however you want to do it, you can crack the Sam, get the sniffer out in the alley. There's all these fancy ways to do it, but the bottom line is it's still a game of numbers. It's an old school game of blocking extra defenders. All right? So if we can push guys out and eliminate, all right, a defender somewhere, now we can use the push motion to block that extra player. Now we can get the Mike out possibly to run the quarterback isolation on the will with the tackle wrap on the will. And now we have quarterback isolation and we've gotten the Mike out. All right, or we've pushed and gotten numbers in the box. We've handled extra defenders, okay, with a push motion. But at the same time, it's all a matter of how we block extra players. All right, and now teams are getting even fancier, and now they're RPOing this to where they're pushing this, wrapping that, quarterback's running the dart, and they're running a route behind it so that if this kid inserts, the quarterback's throwing routes off of that insert. All right, so the game hasn't changed offensively. All right, offensively, the game is still very simple. For the most part, where and how do I get numbers? Okay, where and how do I get numbers? How do I create numbers? All right, and then obviously, usually you're looking to create leverage, and then you're looking to create, all right, or you're looking to try and run the grass. So, you know, numbers, leverage angles, grass, those things all still exist. There's just new ways of doing it now. So within offensive schemes, what you're getting now is there's ways to block extra players with post-snap decisions by the quarterback. All right, but if you really go back, and the reason I'm doing the video today is all this stuff that's happening today was stuff that was happening 25 years ago. It just wasn't as advanced, and you couldn't manipulate the box as much as you can now with all the post-snap stuff. All right, but that really doesn't change from when you go back. All right, and you go back 20 years ago, and you're seeing quarter, half, under front stuff. All right, and one of the first things that you would see most teams that carried power back in the day, off the power play, the next thing that they would carry is some version of power pass. Off of the power play, teams would carry some power pass, so this is where the famous Y banana stuff started happening. But back in the day when it was done from under center, if they were overplaying the power, or if they were a under front team, or they were spinning down, or playing quarters, or maybe even rolling him down, whatever the deal was, you had to find another way to take advantage of the numbers. So play action passes off of the power play, used to be a way to take advantage of numbers or an aggressive 8-man box to get you in situations with your tight end or your fullback into flat, right? Well, the difference back in the day was those all had to be sequence calls where you ran a bunch of power to the tight end, and then based on the way they played it, you came back to power pass or spider 2Y banana or whatever you want to call it. Nowadays, you can do that in a different way. You can handle all that with post-snap and RPO theories, and we can block extra players with what the quarterback reads and how the quarterback, reads all the leverage of the players with routes that are thrown behind them. Okay, so it's just the game is about the same as it was 20 years ago. We're just finding different ways to use the rules to read different players. So now that the quarterback's in the shotgun, the zone read became prominent. Teams started learning how to play the zone read. All of a sudden, RPO started becoming prominent. All the offense is trying to do is say, look, I know that I need a helmet on a helmet. How can I make sure that I get a helmet on a helmet? All right, in what ways can I manipulate the defense to get a helmet on a helmet and get my guys into space? Right? Because defensively, all right, if we look at it from the other side of the coin, if you were a defensive coach and you were going to be facing weak side isolation teams, one of the first things, if you were a reduction front team, all right, and you were going to be facing weak side isolation, and you were some type of either quarter, half, or you were a quarters team, you would always make sure that your will linebacker knew that he had to send the ISO play to the weak safety. So when you got this look here, your will linebacker had to make that ball spill to the extra hitter, which was the weak safety. So how were teams playing really good defense? They were forcing the ball to go, and they always send the ball to a free hitter. Right? That was always the defensive philosophy. It's still a defensive philosophy. Send the ball where you want to send the ball. Based on your rotations and your coverage, send the ball to a free hitter. Okay? Well, within the rules of the game, the way the offense is now handled that is they're reading the free hitter. So the defenses are still playing all these plays the same. They're sending the ball to a free hitter who's being read, and now the ball's going behind the free hitter, so now you have to go out and get corners that can play man-to-man and match up. All right? Because the game hasn't changed. The rules of the game now within shotgun and how teams are playing, offenses are just manipulating the rules to say, okay, offensive linemen have 3 yards that they can go downfield. We're going to post-snap read all these guys. We're going to put the ball in somebody's stomach. They're going to send the ISO play to the free hitter. Let's see what the free hitter does. Free hitter's got 2 choices. Come down and be the free hitter, open up something behind you, stay back there, all right, and defend some passes. And now when you send the ball to a free hitter, there's nobody left to send the ball to. So ultimately, all the offense is doing is trying to find ways to block extra players, just like they did 20, 25 years ago. But now with the rules the way they are, and who knows if they're going to change anytime in the near future. But if you got linemen that can go 3 yards down the field, and you got a quarterback and 5 yards in a shotgun, why don't we just take option football, amp it up to the next level with passing reads, and now when you send the ball to the free hitter, we'll read the free hitter. Okay? So football really hasn't changed all that much. Got to find a way to block extra players. All right, back 25 years ago, I just talked to you a little bit about how they blocked extra players, and now I just showed you how you block extra players now. All right, so the game is cyclical. It comes and goes, and the offense gets up, and the defense gets up, and a rule change helps one or the other. All right, but at the end of the day, all right, it's all the same thing. The offense needs to block defensive players. You need to get a hat on a hat. You need to win to try and get your guys in space and make them make tackles in space and make them make one-on-one tackles. Don't let the defense get +1. All good defenses get +1. That's what they do. So as an offense, you got to stop them from getting +1. You got to be able to block extra players. How do you do that nowadays? The dreaded RPOs. All right, not the play action passes that all the announcers call RPOs, but the real post-snap RPOs where you're actually reading the extra player, all right, that the defense is trying to send the ball to, and you're making him make his mind up how he wants to play. All right, guys, I hope this helps you guys kind of see how the game goes from where it was to where it is now, see how the game was originally done 20, 25 years ago and how we're doing it now. All right, and remember, you won't play well until you play fast. I'll see you guys next time.